Hi everyone, ForsakenIdol here. I recently watched a fantastic video going over the mainline Warframe content updates that have led to the steady decline of reasons to hunt Eidolons. There's no question about it, Eidolon hunting is a dying sport. Eidolon arcanes can now be farmed through phosphor packs, and focus farming is more easily done by killing Thrax on the Zaraman or in Sanctuary Onslaught with a focus lens. More concerningly, there is a very high gear check for anyone wanting to hunt Eidolon solo, even if you're not going very fast. So why would you still want to hunt Eidolons? There's a couple of reasons that come to mind. Eidolon hunting alongside Profit Taker hunts are an alternate endgame to Archimedia missions that require build planning and in-game proficiency. Eidolon shards bypass the daily focus cap. Eidolons are a late-game piece of content on a region that is available very early in the game's progression cycle. I've done a bunch of solo hunts in public squads to give Eidolon drops to other players and to show them what they can do with the right gear. It's a fun way to engage with new players and for me to practice hunting on different levels of ping. And most importantly, I think Eidolon hunting is pretty fun. If you don't focus on the meta too hard and just hang out with your squad. Today, I want to provide a method for new players to get into 5x3 or 6x3 Eidolon hunts with a very low gear requirement, where the only barrier to success is skill and practice. Today, I want to explain how to lure handle. This is a very good skill to have that will get you into faster hunting squads without needing complex builds where you can still provide value to your team. This video will not dive too deep into the basic mechanics of Eidolon hunting, but I'll cover these very quickly. You can hunt 3 Eidolons per play session during night on the plains. These Eidolons are called the Teralyst, Gantulyst, and the Hydrolyst. Each Eidolon can either be killed or captured. Terry requires 2 charged lures for a capture, while Gary and Harry each require 3. Capture of the previous Eidolon tier is required to spawn the next tier of Eidolons. Capturing Harry has a chance to drop 3 arcanes that are not in the drop pool for a kill. Throughout this video, I'll be making references to some Eidolon-specific acronyms and phrases that you may not already be familiar with. I'll cover these acronyms in the video description, but feel free to let me know if I've missed any. One of the difficulties that solo hunters encounter when attempting a 6x3 hunt is how to lure handle effectively. This difficulty manifests in 3 main forms. Quick charging, which is when you try to get a charged lure as fast as possible out of the gate, obtaining new lures, and charging those lures. The second and third objectives are typically done either after breaking Eidolon Synovae, aka limbs, or during the Eidolon Weep phase. The lure handler in a squad serves 2 main purposes. Fetching all required lures that are not the quick charge lure, because the host always quick charges, and charging all lures from the 4th lure onwards. It is also your responsibility as a lure handler to keep the lures alive until you pass them to the host. In order to pass a lure, charged or uncharged, to another player in the squad, you must first pause the lure by interacting with it. The other player will then walk up to the lure and unpause it, making the lure follow them instead. Depending on your frame of choice, you may also have the responsibility of keeping the lures alive, regardless of who the lure is following. Lure handlers take the responsibility and stress of lure management away from the host, allowing them to focus on the actual Eidolon fight. Also, depending on your frame of choice, you may provide additional benefits to a squad, such as a damage increase, damage reduction, or health regen. As a lure handler, once you learn the basics, you can quickly move to faster hunting squads with minimal gear investment, while bringing value to your host. We're going to cover 2 types of lure handler loadouts in this video. We'll start with the poverty loadout, which is aimed at new players wanting to get into this content as fast as possible, where you might not have that many resources to invest in your setup. I'll also share a baseline loadout later, which you can use if you want to lure handle more easily, or even start to hunt solo. Let's start with the poverty loadout, which only requires the Warframe and primary weapon to be built. We'll use Trinity because when we hit the strength breakpoint, her 4th ability, Bless, will completely restore the health and shields of all Eidolon lures and players within your affinity radius. This effectively gives you a panic button in case a lure gets stuck somewhere and keeps taking damage. This is a zero former build, but it does require an Orokin reactor. There is an ability strength threshold that allows Trinity's 4th ability, Bless, to completely restore health and shields of all Warframes and lures in affinity range. Let's highlight a few key mods in this loadout. Energy Nexus gives a steady energy regen over time. This can be swapped out with another mod if you will be running the Xeneric Focus School. Fleeting Expertise makes our abilities much cheaper to cast. This can be swapped with Streamline if you are running Energy Nexus or if you don't have Fleeting Expertise. Narrow-Minded, Continuity, and Ogre Message give us a lot of ability duration. This allows a single cast of Bless to provide residual damage reduction for a long time. Rush gives you sprint speed, which affects the speed of your Archwing. If you put this build on regular Trinity, you will need a single Former anywhere in the build to make it fit. Alternatively, you can drop 3 mod ranks from anywhere in the build, excluding any ability strength mods, to make it fit with 0 Former. Now, let's have a look at our primary weapon, which will be the Fulmin. Either the regular Fulmin or the Fulmin Prime will suffice. Once again, this will require an Orokin Catalyst for 60 mod capacity. This is a standard crit build with radiation mods equipped, and fire rate is useful to increase lure acquisition speed. The Fulmin will be used for both acquiring lures and converting Eidolon Vombalists into their spectral forms to charge the lures. Remember, a lure must absorb 3 spectral Vombalists to be fully charged. There are no other weapons required for the Poverty loadout, but I recommend equipping a melee weapon of your choice to allow you to melee slam out of Archwing. For the Poverty loadout, companions are optional, but can be used to provide additional synergy. A good companion is the Worm Prime, and you can use any companion weapon that can achieve at least 50% modded critical chance for companion bond synergy. Worm Prime is used for 2 reasons. Worm Prime has over 1200 modded shields with calculated redirection to allow us to use reinforced bond. Worm's Precept mod Negate allows us to avoid 1 status effect every 5 seconds. This is particularly useful for the Hydrolyst stage of the fight where there is a lot of lightning. Your Archwing will be the Itzel. Cosmic Crush is used to allow Itzel's third ability, which sucks in the Vombalists, to freeze them in place for easier acquisition. Hyperion Thrusters is the only other recommended mod in this build to increase Archwing flight speed. Now, let's take a look at how to play as a lure handler. Your first job will be helping your host perform a quick charge, or QC. Specifically, unless your host gives you different instructions, you will be helping with something called a 2+2 QC. Before we explain the QC and how the lure handler can help with it, let's see it in action from the host perspective.
Let's go!
The 2+2 is so named because there are 2 pairs of Vombalists that will be spawned. In this scenario, the host spawns the first set of Vombalists in the camp containing the lure, and the lure handler will assist with spawning the second set of Vombalists. The second set of Vombalists that spawn, triggered by the lure handler, is called the +2. In order for the lure handler to spawn the +2, once you exit the gate, bullet jump to clear the nullifying area around the gate, immediately hop into your Archwing, and approach the rock formation directly in front of you, which is called Horns. As you approach the Horns, you should cause the +2 to spawn. Move in, waypoint the +2, and wait for your host to come over to you. Do not move away from the Vombalists that have spawned at Horns, or you may cause them to despawn if your host is not there. Not every host needs help or wants help with spawning the +2 at Horns. Make sure you check with your host regarding this before beginning the 6x3. For reference, here is an example of a quick charge where the host does not need help to spawn the +2.
You know, we'd make a killing as a magic act. One more for me.
After the QC, you must now gather 2 lures from the environment and pass them to your host. You do not need to charge these lures. You can pass them uncharged, but if you collect the lure and there is a pair of Vombalists nearby, and you have the time to do so, you can add charges to the lures before you pause them at your host. But you should not go out of your way to get these charges. That is not required. You must pause the 2 lures at your host before they break the 3rd limb on Terry. The host needs time to unpause the lures before the 4th limb break. After the 4th limb break, Terry will collapse and enter the weep phase. Between the 4th limb break and the weep phase starting, there are Vombalists that will spawn underneath Terry, which the host can use to charge the lures. Those Vombalists will disappear when the weep phase begins, so your host is on a very short timer. Let's see what this stage of the hunt looks like, but from the host POV.
Yes. I'm here to kick bubblegum and chew ass, and I'm all out of X. Wait, hold on.
Energy spike. I advise falling back. That device is insufficient. You are directed to secure and employ additional Eidolon lures. Energy spike. I advise falling back. Spike. I advise falling back. Sentient energy contained. You are closing on victory. Act now.
Resurrection? Ooh, not your day, dude.
This is where knowledge of the environment comes into play. The green symbols you see from my POV in the environment are green Loc-Pins that I've used to denote locations where a lure can spawn. These do not represent all of the possible spawn locations, just the ones that I tend to miss. I strongly encourage you as a lure handler to craft a bunch of these Loc-Pins, go out at night on the plains, and place those pins at certain camps, keeping in mind that there is a limit of 15 Loc-Pins you can place on the plains. After passing the 2 lures to your host, the next stage of the hunt becomes a bit more interesting because there's a bunch of things you need to juggle. As a lure handler, your main role is now to collect and charge 5 more lures. There are 8 lures minimum required for the full hunt and your squad already has 3 of them. Therefore, you must now collect and charge 5 more. You need to do this while paying attention to the host progress on Terry in order to be at the center shrine on time to spawn the next Eidolon, the Gantulyst or Gary. You do not only start collecting the new lures during the next stage, you should start collecting them immediately once you have passed off the aforementioned 2 lures. Once you know where to find these lures, you should be able to collect 5 more before the end of the weep phase on Terry. When Terry gets back up, he will spawn more Vombalists. The host may need these to charge their 3rd lure, but once the host has 3 charged lures, you can return to Terry and use the remaining spawns to charge your lures. There's a few things to keep in mind when searching for 5 more lures. Most of the time at this stage there will be exactly 5 lures as candidates to be spawned in anywhere on the plains. A camp's entities do not spawn in automatically unless a player approaches that camp. Sometimes if you approach too fast, the camp can bug out and not spawn anything. Camps near the host can spawn lures, will typically spawn in their lures throughout the Teralyst stage of the fight. Check out these camps first before you go elsewhere. These camps remain loaded in because of proximity to a player. As you collect and charge lures, pay attention to the host progress on the Teralyst and be ready to fly to the summoning shrine to pick up the Eidolon shards for summoning Gary. After you summon Gary, return to charging the lures using environmental Vombalist spawns around the main lake. Let's take a moment here to discuss shrine behavior. As a refresher, every player in a squad must collect and place the brilliant Eidolon shard into the center shrine to summon Gary. The same goes for Harry with the radiant Eidolon shards. However, only one player can interact with the shrine at a time, which means you need to take turns. Unless your host gives you different instructions, the lure handler always places their shard last out of the squad. This is because wherever possible, the host and any client VS in your squad can actually fly to points on the river where they can preempt one of the 4 possible Eidolon spawns. As a lure handler, you place your shard last because there's nothing for you to preempt. Any Vombalists that you can see will remain spawned in during the entire shrine phase. During the Gary stage of the hunt, continue charging your 5 lures, then once all of them are charged, fly to your host and pause those lures. Your host will take those lures and the main part of your job as a lure handler is now finished. When you are just starting out as a lure handler, it's understandable that you may not be able to charge all 5 of the lures before the last limb break on Gary. However, the minimum number of lures you need to charge for Gary is 3. This is because along with the charged lure that the host has at the start of the Gary fight, you will have 4 charged lures in total and you need to pause 3 of those lures instead of the 5 that you have following you, giving your host 4 lures to follow. 3 of those charged lures will be consumed when capturing Harry and the host will have 1 charged lure left over to prevent Harry from teleporting. You will have 2 more lures to charge for capturing Harry. If, however, you are able to charge all 5 lures before the Harry stage of the hunt, your job as a lure handler is effectively done. As Trinity, simply stay close to the lures and your host and pay attention to their health. If your operator amp has the Propus Scaffold or the Raplak Prism, you can also assist with bringing down the shield. However, do not aim at any of the Eidolon limbs as there are bugs that can occur if a client destroys a limb instead of a host. Simply aim at either the main Eidolon body or get headshots with the Raplak primary fire. If your amp is not built, you should simply focus on blessing in order to heal the lures and your host and provide them with damage reduction. Now, let's put all of this together and see a full 1x3 session from the perspective of a lure handler.
And now, a massive sentient energy spike in your area. I advise you to be careful. Those devices draw energy from Vombalists. Make use of them. Next, you attempt to take control of it. Energy spike. I advise falling back. That device is insufficient. You are directed to secure and employ additional Eidolon lures. Energy spike. I advise falling back. Energy spike. I advise falling back. Smaller sentients rush to the Eidolon's aid, healing it. Stop them. Sentient energy contained. You are closing on victory. Act now. Energy spike. I advise falling back. That device is insufficient. You are directed to secure and employ additional Eidolon lures. Energy spike. I advise falling back. 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 Sentient energy contained. You are closing on victory. Act now. Energy spike. I advise falling back. That device is insufficient. You are directed to secure and employ additional Eidolon lures. Energy spike. I advise falling back. Energy spike. I advise falling back. Energy spike. I advise advise falling back. Energy spike. I advise falling back. Sentient energy contained. You are closing on victory. Act now.
The Poverty loadout provides you with enough tools to 6x3 consistently, but there are many improvements we can make to the builds that make you more tanky, make your abilities better, and make you deal more damage and just go places quicker. Enter the baseline loadouts, which require more investment but make your role easier to play. Let's start with Trinity. The baseline build is a straight upgrade with prime continuity and maxed out vitality. Once again, we continue to spec into strength, duration, and efficiency, while sacrificing range as it's not necessary for Bless. This also gives us an opportunity to discuss potential subsumes over Trinity's first ability. Here, I've chosen Protea's Dispensary, as it's a good subsume to help your host without needing to build for range. You can run Raw for a damage buff instead, but you will need to be very close to your host when you cast it for them to receive the effects of Raw, so positioning is important if you choose to use Raw as your subsume. Anything that benefits from strength and duration without needing much range will be good as a subsume if you choose to use one. The Fulmin also has a few changes for the baseline build. This is an example of a full build, but you don't need anywhere near this many mods. I use this build because I previously invested into the Fulmin for other content. An alternative to the Fulmin and a good weapon for players branching into leading hunts is the Rubico Prime. This is the first go-to weapon that hunters use when attempting to hunt solo or lead a squad. While it might have a rather steep price at around 60 platinum as of making this video, it's fairly simple to build and easy to use. Here is a one-former build that can take out both lures and limbs pretty easily. In the melee weapon slot, it's time to discuss Gunblades. There are two Gunblades, the Vastalok and the Sarpa, that are meta for Eidolon hunting, because the gunpowder of these Gunblades deals impact damage. This allows us to strip Eidolon armor with Shattering Impact equipped. The Vastalok will strip armor faster than the Sarpa, but it is also harder to acquire than the Sarpa. The Vastalok is a Barrow Key tier offering or bought with plat, while the Sarpa can be acquired from the market. For our purposes, let's show a basic Sarpa build that you can use as a lure handler to assist your host with the armor strip as required. If you're not building out the Sarpa, you can still use it to melee slam out of Archwing, just like before. For the baseline loadout, Worm Prime becomes very useful with Companion Bond synergy, but you still don't need a fully built companion weapon for lure handling, since you spend a lot of time in Archwing. We use both Tenacious Bond and Reinforced Bond on the companion to improve our critical damage and fire rate respectively. The Itzel Archwing build has some additions to ability range, allowing us to pull Vombalists in from further away with Cosmic Crush, and some ability efficiency to make that ability cost less energy to use. Last but not least, you may consider building a Necramech. The Necramech in this scenario is just a platform on which we can equip the Kuvagratler to give us an AoE arc gun that we can just shoot the ground near the Eidolon to harvest Vombalists for our lures. An alternative to bringing Trinity is to bring Jade as a lure handler. When bringing Jade, you lose the ability to heal lures in exchange for a number of arguably stronger buffs for you and your host. Jade's first ability, when thrown on the ground, acts as a Wisp health mote. It creates a zone that provides healing to Warframes that enter the zone, and the effect remains for a time when they leave the zone. Jade's second ability provides 3 buffs that are all good in a hunting squad. The ability strength buff improves the strength of your host's abilities. Deathbringer increases both weapon and operator damage, and is the buff you will be using the most, and Spirit of Resilience increases shield regen, which can be swapped on when the host is not firing. Furthermore, these buffs, like Bless on Trinity, are tied to your affinity range, meaning you can sacrifice modded range on Jade as well for an Eidolon build. Jade's fourth ability is an open Helmeth slot for Eidolon hunting purposes, as you do not use Glory on High when hunting. I personally run Nourish from Grendel to assist with my energy economy, but you can run Protea's Dispensary as well, or another subsume of your choice. Here is a 3-former build that, once again, prioritizes strength and duration. We slot one ability range mod to make the range of our healing mote slightly larger and easier to place in such a way that our host can easily find it if they need the health regen. Let's have a quick discussion on which focus school to bring as a lure handler. When I shared the poverty loadout, I was running Xeneric. This is the easiest school to use because you get energy regen from Wellspring, and Inner Might lets you cast without spending energy. The meta focus school to bring, especially in solo hunts, is Madurai. Void Strike increases your operator and Warframe damage, while Contamination Wave makes enemies, including the Eidolon, more vulnerable to operator damage. Madurai also increases your elemental damage from Phoenix Talons. There are 2 other options. Unairu gives you access to the Caustic Strike ability, and while this does not strip Eidolon armor, throwing it at the Eidolon can trigger Unairu Wisp to buff amp damage for your host. This also gives you some extra armor from Stone Skin. Vazarin's most relevant perk is Mending Unity, allowing you to trigger Trinity's Bless or Jade's buffs from further away. As Trinity, you can bring any of the 4 focus schools, but I would recommend bringing either Xeneric or Unairu. You can bring Madurai for Void Strike if you are helping to clear Eidolon shields. Jade, on the other hand, already buffs operator damage, so there is no need for Madurai, and you can bring either Xeneric or Unairu. In either scenario, if you find yourself standing further back than normal, you can also bring Vazarin, but this is typically not recommended. There are very few changes to Trinity's playstyle when moving from the poverty loadout to the baseline loadout, aside from lure acquisition speed. So let's have a look at how your playstyle changes when you play Jade as a lure handler. As mentioned before, Jade does not have any way to heal lures. Her first ability only heals Warframes, which means that you need to take care when handling lures not to get them stuck in a place where you can't move them. Her support playstyle is also more active, because now you actually have ways to buff your hosts. After you've charged your 5 lures and given them to your host, if you don't like micromanaging your buffs, just cycle over to Deathbringer, the weapon damage buff, and maintain this buff while staying within 50 meters of your hosts. However, it is possible to micromanage the buffs by cycling over to the shield regen buff after your host fires at each limb, and cycle back to the weapon damage buff when your host is about to fire again. Let's have a look at a full set running Jade to see how this is different to Trinity.
And now, a massive sentient energy spike in your area. I advise you to be careful. Energy spike. I advise falling back. That device is insufficient. You are directed to secure and employ additional Eidolon lures. Energy spike. I advise falling back. Energy spike. I advise falling back. Sentient energy contained. You are closing on victory. Act now. Spike. I advise falling back. That device is insufficient. You are directed to secure and employ additional Eidolon lures. Energy spike. I advise falling back. Spike. I advise falling back. Energy spike. I advise falling back. Spike. I advise falling back. Sentient energy contained. You are closing on victory. Act now. Spike. I advise falling back. That device is insufficient. You are directed to secure and employ additional Eidolon lures. Energy spike. I advise falling back. I advise falling back. Energy spike. I advise falling back. Energy spike. I advise falling back. Sentient energy contained. You are closing on victory. Act now.
And that just about wraps it up. The barrier to a good lure handler is not in the difficulty of putting a build together, but rather in the skill needed to use the build to its required potential. I wanted to take a slightly different approach to all the solo Eidolon guides out there and show you an easier method to get into this content. I hope you've learned something today about the lure handler process, and now you feel equipped to go out in 6x3 with your squad. If you have any questions about what I've shown today, feel free to let me know down in the comments, or let me know in game. Thanks for watching.